Fellas, every UFC weight class in the UFC right now has a complete mix of different styles. There are lots of grapplers, there's lots of strikers, so I've gone through each weight class and I've made one striker versus grappler matchup that I feel like would be one, the most high level, and two, the most entertaining that you can make in every weight class. So let me know if you'd have switched any of the fighters around, or you'd have changed the fight in general. But we're going there with the heavyweight division. I've gone with Ciryl Gane versus Jailton Almeida. Now we look at Ciryl Gane and we look at his grappling issues in the past. Obviously, he's known for getting ragdolled by Francis Ngannou and then obviously submitted by John Jones pretty quickly without any issues from Jones. And now we're putting him up against one of the most dangerous grapplers in the division right now, and kind of a stylistic nightmare for Gane in Jailton Almeida, a guy who's been climbing the rankings, with super offensive grappling, high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and probably one of the most dangerous grappling prospects or contenders now, I guess, if he gets past Curtis Blades in the UFC. And then we've got Ciryl Gane, probably the best striker in the heavyweight division. I mean, there's Aspinall as well that you can make a case for, but it's hard to say that Ciryl Gane isn't up there with the best striking in the heavyweight division. So good on his back foot, his defense is nearly flawless, his offense is good as well, not the most dangerous, but he's got great he's just a super technical striker in the heavyweight division, and I feel like putting Ciryl Gane against Jailton Almeida would be the perfect test for both of them. It's a test for Ciryl Gane to see if his grappling actually has improved since the John Jones fight against an extremely tough grappler, and then for Almeida, it's a test because he's never been against a guy as experienced and with high-level striking as much as Ciryl Gane. It's a test for both of them. It's practically a #1 contender fight for both of them because the winner is undoubtedly going to get a title shot against Aspinall. So, yeah. Almeida versus Ciryl Gane, grappler versus striker. I'd love to see that matchup, and maybe if Jailton Almeida can get past Curtis Blades, this is going to be a matchup that we see, so Gane versus Almeida, I hope we see that one day in the heavyweight division, and we probably will, because I feel like these heavyweights are going to be sticking around a while and fighting each other, and we're going to be seeing a lot of these, Almeidas, Ganes, Pavloviches, and Aspinalls kind of take turns fighting each other. But that's my pick for the heavyweight division. Light heavyweight, this is one that could actually happen very soon. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Now, assuming that Alex Pereira can get past Jamal Hill at UFC 300, this is most likely going to be the next fight we see in the light heavyweight division, and I love this matchup. You've got Alex Pereira, one of the most dangerous strikers in the UFC. Some would say he is the best striker in the UFC right now. Dangerous left hook, super dangerous and just super technical at the same time. And then we've got Ankalaev, and I know Ankalaev's not just a pure grappler, but he is the best grappler in the division. But he's also got a good level of striking as well, which I guess could cause problems for Pereira as well. But you'd look at that, and it is the toughest test for Pereira out of all the contenders. You look at all the contenders, Ankalaev is by far the toughest test, because we've seen that Pereira in the past, similar to Gane, has had a lot of problems when it comes to grappling against Yuri Prohaska and against Jan Blachowicz, and if he's having problems against them, he's only going to have even worse problems against a guy as great as Ankalaev when it comes to grappling. But again, Ankalaev's had a problem on the feet, he's had problems against Jan Blachowicz when it comes to leg kicks, and if there's anything that Pereira does amazingly, it's absolutely destroying his opponent's legs. So I feel like both of them, it's a dangerous fight for them, but dangerous for Ankalaev on the feet and dangerous for Pereira when it comes to grappling. It's by far the toughest contender for Alex Pereira, but at the same time, it's also the toughest matchup in the division for Magomed Ankalaev. We're probably going to see this soon, and I hope we do, because this would be such an interesting matchup. Two completely different styles going against each other. We get to see how well Ankalaev's striking is improved, and also how well Alex Pereira's takedown defense has improved. We're probably going to see this fight, and I hope we do. So that's my pick for the light heavyweight division. Middleweight, I've gone for Israel Adesanya and Khamzat Chimaev. This is probably one of the best ones on this list. I mean, not only is it a striker versus a grappler, but it's also a case of, if it finishes early, it's probably going to be a Khamzat Chimaev, and if someone wins in the later rounds, it's probably going to be Israel Adesanya. I mean, Adesanya, again, similar to Pereira, one of the best strikers in the UFC, top 5 strikers, or at least top 10 strikers of all time in the UFC. And then we've got Khamzat Chimaev, which is by far going to be the toughest test when it comes to grappling that Israel Adesanya has ever faced. He's used to facing guys like Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori, and those are his biggest grappling threats. We've just seen what Khamzat Chimaev did to Kamaru Usman in round 1. And I know I'm only talking about round 1 because his stamina is terrible, but we saw what Khamzat Chimaev could do to Kamaru Usman in round 1. Imagine what he could do to Adesanya. If he's doing that to Usman, imagine what he would do to Israel Adesanya. I think Chimaev would 100% be able to take Adesanya down and play with him for the first couple of rounds. But if he can't finish Adesanya in the first 2 rounds, I think that's where it becomes a really dangerous fight for Khamzat Chimaev. Adesanya's experienced going 5 rounds, he's a great striker, and that's when we're probably going to see Adesanya pick Khamzat Chimaev apart with his technicality, and it would become a really dangerous fight for Chimaev. I think this fight, again, the build-up would be amazing. Easy main event for a pay-per-view if you don't need a belt, or just sticking on a co-main event of like a middleweight headliner. This is a fight that I hope we see one day. Chimaev versus Adesanya, just a pure grappler versus striking matchup. I hope we see that one day in the middleweight division. We were close to seeing it as well. If Chimaev would have got a couple more wins and Adesanya would have beaten Strickland, we weren't far off seeing this matchup, so I hope we see it. And it's also a great fight for both of them. The winner of this fight can get a title shot, so I hope we see that fight one day. Welterweight, another fight that we're probably going to see soon. Leon Edwards versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now again, assuming that Leon Edwards can beat Belal Muhammad, which he's probably going to fight next, this is a fight that we're most likely going to see. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Leon Edwards. I mean, Shavkat, he's undefeated. He's finished every single one of his opponents. He's coming off 2 submissions against Jeff Neal and Wonderboy Thompson. And he's no doubt that he's probably next in line for a title shot after Belal Muhammad. And then we've got Leon Edwards, one of the most technical strikers in the UFC. He just outpoints everyone. I know that kind of seems like an insult. I'm saying that he can't finish anyone, but he's just such a good striker technically. One of the best kickboxers in the UFC right now. And we've seen in these last few fights, specifically against Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, that he's improved his grappling so much. I mean, he even landed a takedown against Covington, and he was even able to land a takedown against Usman as well. So his grappling's improved a lot, not only defensively, but offensively. And I think it's just a tough fight for both of them. You've got Shavkat Rakhmonov with this extremely dangerous submission game that could pose a lot of problems to Leon Edwards. But again, Shavkat's not the most, well-rounded striker in the UFC. He leaves himself, getting caught a lot. Not the best striker in the welterweight division. That's kind of a nightmare for Shavkat when you're facing a guy as technical as Leon Edwards. It's a tough fight for both. I think there's a lot of routes for both of them to win, but it's a dangerous fight for both of them. Also a winnable fight for both of them. Leon versus Shavkat, I hope we see this one day, and we probably will, assuming that Leon can get past Belal. Lightweight, I've gone for Islam Makhachev versus Justin Gaethje. Now again, similar to Ankalaev, it's not that Islam Makhachev's just a one-dimensional fighter. It's not like he's only got grappling. He can strike too. But I feel like Gaethje would be a really intriguing matchup to see how how their styles fare against each other, because Gaethje's got this big wrestling background, and outside of the Khabib fight, he's never really had big grappling problems in the UFC. It's kind of like he's got wrestling, but he just chooses not to use it, and he's kind of known for having this dangerous, powerful, kind of bulldozing, walk forward, high output style of striking, which could be tough for a guy like Islam Makhachev. And I know it was a specific circumstance, but he did get caught by Volkanovski a few times, and if he's getting caught by Volkanovski, imagine what a guy like Gaethje could do. But again, we've seen that Gaethje got mauled by Khabib, and if Khabib can do it, a guy as well-rounded as Islam Makhachev, I feel like he could definitely do it too. And we're probably going to see this matchup next if Gaethje can get past Holloway, which I think he will. We're probably going to see Gaethje versus Islam Makhachev down the line, and I think it's a great matchup. I do think Islam would finish him in the first few rounds, but just because Gaethje's got this wrestling background and that he just chooses not to use, and the fact that it's a dangerous fight on the feet for Islam, I think it's a really interesting matchup. So Islam versus Gaethje in the lightweight division. Then featherweight, I've gone for Movsar Evloev versus Volkanovski. Now, I feel like this is a fun matchup for Volkanovski because he doesn't have the threat of getting knocked out like he had against Topuria and Islam Makhachev. Because they're both hard hitters and great strikers, there was a big threat of Volkanovski getting knocked out, and that's exactly what he did. He got knocked out in both of them. Evloev doesn't have that. In fact, he's kind of like the opposite of Shavkat. He's never finished anyone in the UFC, and I don't think he'd have much striking problems that he could give Volkanovski on the feet. I think Volkanovski could pretty much flawlessly piece up Evloev on the feet, but then Evloev's got probably some of the best wrestling in the featherweight division. You take away guys like Topuria, and it's hard to make a case that anyone's got better grappling than Evloev. We just saw what he did to Arnold Allen. So Evloev versus Volkanovski, undefeated Evloev as well, going up against Volkanovski, who's on a 2-fight losing streak. I don't think there's a knockout threat for Volkanovski, but at the same time, it's a completely different style to what he's used to fighting. It's not just another striker for Volkanovski to face, it's a grappler. So grappler versus striker, Volkanovski versus Evloev. That'll be a fun matchup, and it's not a threatening matchup for Volkanovski either. He doesn't have to walk into the fight with the threat of getting absolutely slumped like he did against Topuria. I hope we do see this one day. I know I've said that about every fight so far, but I hope we do see this one day. Evloev's #1 contender fight against Volkanovski. Let's see it. And then bantamweight. Merab versus Sean O'Malley. We're probably going to see this if Sean O'Malley beats Marlon Vera. I think they've pretty much confirmed that this is next in the bantamweight division. Yeah, again, another really interesting matchup because Sean O'Malley, we'll talk about Merab first. We saw what Merab could do to Henry Cejudo. If he's doing that to Henry Cejudo, this relentless grappling, making Cejudo look like he's never grappled in his life, if he's doing that to a guy like Henry Cejudo, imagine what he'd do to Sean O'Malley. And I know Sean O'Malley's got good takedown defense, but he was getting out grappled in times against guys like Peter Yan. If Peter Yan can do that, and we saw what Merab could do to Peter Yan, I feel like Merab is an absolute nightmare matchup for Sean O'Malley. But again, so was Aljamain Sterling, and Sean O'Malley was able to catch him. So I feel like he put a grappler versus a striker similar to Sterling versus O'Malley. A guy is high output, relentless, amazing cardio, could easily go 5 rounds like he did against Yan in Merab, against a guy who's as dangerous on the feet, exciting on the feet, with good takedown defense against Sean O'Malley. Both of them are the best in the division right now. I mean, even if O'Malley was to beat Merab would 100% be the #1 contender for a while, and no one's coming close to beating him outside of O'Malley. So I guess Nurmagomedov could, but either way, Merab versus O'Malley, we're going to see this fight soon, and this would be an absolute banger because of the clash of styles between them. And yeah, that's the highest level grappler versus striker matchup you can make in the bantamweight division. And then finally, flyweight. I'd actually be really intrigued to see Brandon Moreno versus Muhammad Mokaev. We're going to be seeing Mokaev, well, at the time of uploading this, we're going to be seeing him fight today against Alex Perez, which I think he's going to win. Not flawlessly. I mean, every single time he wins, none of them are flawless, but I think Mokaev's going to win. And I'd love to see how Moreno matches up against a guy like Mokaev, because Moreno's got good grappling, he's got a really good defensive grappling base, and I think he's got underrated submission game as well. But Muhammad Mokaev, he's looked, like I said, he's always able to pull off submissions out of nowhere. Even if he's getting rocked, even if he's, losing on the scorecards, or even if he's having a submission threat himself, he's always able to pull off a submission out of nowhere. And I'm intrigued to see a guy like Moreno, who's fought the highest level grapplers in guys like Pantoja and Davison Figueiredo. I'm really intrigued to see how Moreno would style up against a young, undefeated prospect in Muhammad Mokaev. I think that's a really interesting matchup, 100% the toughest matchup of Mokaev's career. He's never fought a guy as experienced and good on the feet as Muhammad Mokaev, as Brandon Moreno. So Mokaev versus Moreno, I want to see that in the flyweight division, and maybe we will if Mokaev can get past Alex Perez, because Moreno has just lost to Brandon Royval. But yeah, that is a striker versus grappler matchup that I hope we see in every UFC weight class. I think it's high level. I think it would be a fun fight as well. And I think it just makes sense to book most of these matchups. So let me know your thoughts on all the matchups and your predictions of who would win. And thank you for watching.